At the age of 8, my parents gave me up for adoption because I was a boy. 21 years later, I built a multi-million-dollar company and inherited my adoptive father's fortune. My biological father appeared. My name's Aiden Miller. I'm 29. And when I was 8, my parents gave me away because I wasn't the daughter they had planned their lives around. People blink when I say that. They think I mean because we were poor or because they were sick. But no, we weren't poor. And they weren't sick. Scott and Karen Miller had a tidy townhouse, a minivan that smelled like air freshener, and a family photo wall full of one glowing-faced Lily. My sister, the golden child. I wasn't golden. I was the noise in the background. For as long as I can remember, I learned to be quiet in our kitchen. It was spotless, color-coordinated, and always cold. I had a teddy bear with one missing eye that I kept taping back on. That tape finally ran out the night the sky broke open. I was hiding under the kitchen table. The bear clutched against my chest. When my mother's voice ripped through the rain, "You promised you'd handle this." "Scott, I can't live like this anymore." My father's tone was flat, measured like always. "I already called the Baptist camp. They know a couple who's looking to adopt." He said it like he was arranging a package delivery. I should have known right then that my life was about to be handed off to someone else. The next morning, the sky was gray and the house smelled like old coffee. A man and woman stood in the doorway, Elaine and Victor Hayes. Elaine had kind eyes and a raincoat a size too big. Victor wore a tie that didn't sit right. "We're here to take you to breakfast," Elaine said softly. My parents didn't pack a bag. They didn't ask what toy I wanted to bring. I left with the clothes on my back and that broken bear. Lily stood at the top of the stairs, hair braided, perfect as always. She didn't wave. That morning wasn't a surprise. It was the end of a pattern I'd been too young to name. Second grade art show. I spent 2 weeks drawing our townhouse brick by brick, hiding a little cat behind the curtains. I showed it to my mom like it was treasure. She glanced once, folded it in half, and used it as scrap paper. "Don't be so sensitive," she said when my eyes watered. "We can't keep everything. Field trip fee $45. I waited until after dinner to ask. Dad didn't even look up from the bills. "We can't spend money on extras." That same night, I overheard him hand Lily his card. "You'll need new ballet shoes. Don't go over 70. Incident 3 birthday season. Lily turned 10. She got a bike with pink ribbons. 3 weeks later, I turned 8. My party was a store-bought muffin with a candle. Mom slid a $5 bill into my hand and said, "Don't make a mess." I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. Then came the chores. "Aiden, wash the car. Aiden, rake the yard. Aiden, clean Lily's bathroom. She's got practice." If I did everything perfectly, no one noticed. If I missed a spot, Dad would stand in the doorway and say, "Do it again. Do it right." One afternoon, I came home to find Lily's bed covered in new clothes, jeans with patches, glitter shoes, sequin tops. Nothing on mine. "Are any of those for me?" I asked quietly. Mom didn't look up. "You already have something to wear." Something in me cracked. I grabbed the scissors and started cutting every sleeve, every hem. It wasn't hate. It was desperation. Mom stormed in, screamed, and shoved me hard into the wall. "You are a mistake. A damn mistake." The words stuck like splinters. That night, when Dad came home, he didn't even sit down. "Aiden," he said, eyes fixed on the floor, "tomorrow, you're going to live with other people." He said it like he was canceling a subscription. The next morning, Elaine and Victor stood on the porch. Awkward but kind. Elaine crouched to my level. "You ready?" "Sweetheart." I looked past her. Mom was at the window but didn't open the door. She just watched. Victor held out his hand. I took it. That was the moment the world split before and after. The drive was silent. Rain drummed on the windshield. I counted the seconds between lightning and thunder. 5 seconds. 1 mile. I still do that sometimes. Elaine and Victor's house was smaller, cluttered, alive. A radio hummed from the kitchen. The hallway smelled like cinnamon. You can take the room with the map wallpaper, Elaine said. Victor hung it crooked, and he refuses to admit it. Victor laughed. We'll get you a new jacket before winter, and maybe fix that bear, properly teach you to sew it yourself. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever offered to teach me anything before. For the first few nights, I kept my shoes beside the bed habit, waiting to be sent away again. But they didn't. They tucked me in, asked how school went, called me by name like it meant something. 6 months later, the adoption was finalized in court. My last name stayed Miller, but my heart belonged to Hayes. Even now, I can still see that kitchen table, that rain, that bear. That's where everything started and where one family ended. But what they didn't know was that giving me away didn't erase me. It planted a fuse. And years later, when that man would show up at my company door, pretending he wanted to make things right, every drop of that storm would come rushing back. For now, I was just a kid in a new house, learning what safety felt like. I should have known the calm wouldn't last forever. When I first moved in with Victor and Elaine Hayes, I didn't understand what home meant. I thought it was something you earned by keeping quiet. But they didn't rescue me with big gestures. They rescued me with consistency. The kind that feels almost boring until you realize it's saving your life. The first week, Elaine labeled a shelf in the fridge, Aiden's. Inside were a few yogurts, an apple, and a note that said, "You can always have more. This is just proof there's something here for you." The second week, Victor sat me at the kitchen table and taught me how to thread a needle. "You want that bear to look like he's been through a war or through a repair shop," he teased. I grinned without realizing it. The thread tugged tight. And for the first time, something broken stayed together. For months, I waited for the rules to flip. In my old house, kindness was currency. You could lose it overnight. But here, the rules were written on a small whiteboard near the door. Shoes off. Ask before borrowing tools. Say if something feels wrong. Simple. Permanent. Safe. 6 months later, the court finalized the adoption. I remember Elaine kneeling to tie my shoe before we went inside the courthouse. "This is the easy part," she whispered. "The hard part is learning you deserve to stay." I didn't believe her then, but she was right. Victor's trunk was an adventure. He sold socket sets, drill bits, tool belts, ordinary things. But he treated each customer like an old friend. On Saturdays, he'd let me ride along. He had a route through small neighborhoods and mechanic shops where people knew his name. "You can't sell to everyone," he said once, flipping through his spiral notebook. "But you can be honest with everyone." He wrote down names, birthdays, even yokes. When someone bought a hammer, he'd remember it months later. Watching him, I realized business wasn't about money. It was about being the kind of person people trust to come back. Elaine worked at Finch Street Bakery, and she always smelled faintly of sugar and cinnamon. After her shift, she'd stop by the garage and survey Victor's chaos. "You need a system," she'd say, brushing flour off her sleeve. "Otherwise, you'll die under a pile of wrenches." By fall, we had pegboards, chalk lobes, and a ledger. Victor started paying me $9 an hour to sort and clean. He handed me a white envelope every Friday with my hours scribbled on the front. "When this hits 300, he said, "we'll open a bank account." I hit it by November. When the banker handed me the form and called me sir, I almost cried. It wasn't about the money, it was about permanence. Winter came early that year. And so did the idea. One of Victor's customers, a contractor, asked if he could stop by instead of waiting for deliveries. "You should have a storefront," he joked. 2 months later, we did. A small unit on Carlton Avenue. 700 square feet. $525 a month. Elaine typed up Victor's sales notes as proof we could pay. This isn't a dream, she told the landlord. It's data. We opened Hayes Supply Co. with 2 sawhorses for a counter and a label maker that barely worked. Our first day, we sold $186 worth of tools. Victor said it was luck. Elaine said it was faith. I said it was both. For as long as I can remember, I thought being useful was the only way to be loved. But the high S's didn't treat work like a test. They treated it like trust. Don't earn dinner, Victor would tell me. Earn experience. By the time I hit 16, I was running inventory better than half the local shops. By 18, I was helping negotiate with suppliers. When graduation came, Elaine cried through the whole ceremony. You're the first Hayes to finish high school with honors, she said. Victor corrected her. First, but not last. College felt impossible at first. Tuition looked like another planet's currency. But then the acceptance letter came with a small scholarship and work study attached. Elaine stuck it on the fridge like a piece of art. Progress is the only fair measure, she told me. I studied business operations. But really, I was studying Victor. When the professor explained supply chains, I saw the garage in every diagram. When they said micro-distribution, I thought, we already built that. I graduated at 21. Victor cried. Elaine hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. We took a picture outside the auditorium, me holding my diploma. Both of them smiling like the sun came up just for us. 2 years later, they decided to take a weekend trip, something they almost never did. A bed and breakfast 2 hours north. Hiking. A rare bit of rest. They never made it home. A truck lost its brakes on a blind curve. The deputy told me it was instantaneous, as if that word could soften it. I handled the paperwork like a machine. I signed. I nodded. I thanked strangers who didn't know what to say. Then I went back to the shop because that's what they would have done. When the will came, it was painfully simple. To our son, Aiden, we leave everything because he already gave us everything that matters. I didn't cry reading it. I just folded it carefully and set it beside the register. Then I opened the store the next morning. The garage became a full warehouse. The store became 2 branches. I hired more people, some fresh out of school, some who just needed a second chance. Within 5 years, Hayes Supply Co. had 100 employees. Every Friday, I'd sit at my desk after closing and whisper into the quiet Elaine. The pegboard's still straight. Victor. The receipt printer's still broken, but we keep it for luck. Grief never really leaves. It just learns to walk beside you. And sometimes, in that quiet, I swore I could hear Victor's voice again. Tension makes things stronger unless you yank. He was right. What I didn't know then was that life was preparing me for a different kind of tension, the kind that doesn't come from hard work, but from blood you thought you'd outgrown. The night I hit $1 million in total revenue, I stood alone in the warehouse. The lights off, except for the blue glow of the sign outside. That's when the phone rang. Security. There's a man here asking for you. The guard said. Says his name is Scott Miller. Says he's your father. I froze. 22 years had passed since I'd last heard that voice. And in that moment, the distance between lightning and thunder vanished. When the elevator doors slid open that night, I thought I was ready. I'd faced audits, angry suppliers, even the slow burn of grief. But nothing in my 30 years prepared me for what was waiting in the lobby. Scott Miller. My father. He looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders slumped, beard unkempt, clothes that had seen better years. The man who once ordered me around like I was a chore now stood under fluorescent light, clutching a grocery bag as if it were a lifeline. Aiden, he said softly. The sound of my name in his mouth made something twist in my chest. Behind him sat 2 women in their late 20s. For a second, I didn't recognize them. Then I saw it, the same blue-gray eyes I used to see in the mirror. My sisters. I said quietly. Megan. and Danielle. They both looked up, uncertain smiles flickering. I hadn't seen them since the day Elaine and Victor picked me up. Back then, there was only one sister who mattered, Lily. The golden child. She wasn't here. Scott followed my gaze. Lily's not with us anymore, he said, voice low. Cancer. Few years back. 1,000 things rushed through me at once: anger, pity, confusion, but mostly disbelief. The name I'd carried as a scar was suddenly gone, like a door closed forever. Scott gestured behind him. These are my girls, he said, nodding toward Megan and Danielle. And their kids. 4 small children were sitting near the reception sofa, legs crossed, crayons scattered on the coffee table. Your mother's gone too, Scott continued. She ran off with some man. These 2 came back home with their kids. No help. No money. I didn't answer. My silence made him restless. He twisted his cap, eyes darting to the security guard standing nearby. You've done well for yourself, he said at last. Real proud of you. Son. That word again. Son. It didn't sound like family. It sounded like leverage. What do you want? Scott, I asked quietly. It took a deep breath. Not much. Just some help. Maybe a loan. Or, he hesitated. Maybe something bigger. Something right. He pulled a photograph from his pocket, faded, folded, barely holding together. A boy under a Christmas tree, holding a lopsided gift. Me. I think about that day sometimes, he said. Wish things had gone different. I stared at him, searching for something: remorse. Maybe. But behind his eyes, I only saw calculation. Then came the real reason he was here. I want you to do for them what those people did for you, he said. Adopt my grandkids. Give them a home. The sentence didn't land. It detonated. You want me to raise your daughter's children? I asked slowly. Because you couldn't raise your own. He flinched. They deserve the same chance you had. You turned out fine. Didn't you? Behind him, one of the kids, a little girl, maybe 6, looked up and whispered, Are you Uncle Aiden? I nodded faintly. Yeah, I guess I am. Scott took that as victory. See, you care. You've got a good heart. No, I said. I have boundaries. He blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'll help the innocent, I said, stepping closer. But not the guilty. I turned to the security guard. Call my lawyer. He's still upstairs. Scott frowned. A lawyer you don't need. But I did. Because I was about to draw the line that would define the rest of my life. When my lawyer arrived, I didn't look away from Scott. I'll set up trust funds for the children, I said. Full tuition. Materials. Transportation. If they stop attending, the help ends. The money goes directly to the schools, none to you or your daughters. Scott's jaw clenched. You think that makes you noble? I'm not noble, I said. Just done. He stepped forward, voice rising. You think you can erase us with money? You erased me with silence. I replied. This is me making sure the next generation doesn't pay for it. Megan began to cry. Danielle covered her face. Scott glared at me for a long second, then turned away. He left. For months, he stayed gone. But I couldn't stop thinking about that little girl. Are you Uncle Aiden? Her voice kept replaying, soft and curious, like she didn't know what the word family meant yet. So I made sure the funds were activated within a week. The kids started school, clean uniforms, backpacks, smiles too wide for their faces. They didn't know who was paying for any of it. And that was exactly how I wanted it. A few months later, the report cards started arriving in the mail, each one signed in colorful crayon. Thank you, Uncle Aiden. I kept them all in a folder labeled New Roots. Then, one evening, I found Scott waiting in the parking lot. Alone this time. His jacket was torn, and his face carried that same mix of exhaustion and bitterness I remembered from childhood. Aiden, he called. Wait. I gave you my answer, I said, unlocking my car. He stepped closer. I just need a little money. Just enough to get by. No, I said flatly. You've got more than you could ever spend. He snapped. You think you're better than me? No, I said, turning to face him. Just different. He swallowed hard. I was young. I didn't know how to be a father. You were 36. I said quietly. You knew. Something broke in his face. Maybe pride. Maybe the illusion that he still had power. He looked at the ground, muttered something, and walked away into the night. He didn't come back after that. Years passed. The kids grew up, graduated, and started working. One by one. They came to me for internships. First, in the warehouse. Then, the admin office. Exactly how Victor had done with me. One afternoon, the oldest Liam looked up from a stack of invoices. Uncle Aiden, he said, Grandpa used to tell us you were angry because you were jealous. But I think he was jealous of you. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But I didn't build all this to prove him wrong. I built it so you'd never have to ask the questions I asked at 8 years old. He nodded slowly. Like why your parents didn't want you. Exactly. He didn't push further. And I was grateful. Some truths live better unspoken. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought about Scott's last words. We're still blood. But blood isn't a guarantee, it's just chemistry. Family is the people who stay when things break. I had learned that from Victor and Elaine. They didn't share my blood. They shared my life. And maybe that's why. When I looked at the grown faces of those kids I'd once promised to help, I finally realized something. I hadn't just broken the cycle. I'd buried it. By the time I turned 35, life had settled into something close to peace. The company had grown beyond anything Victor and Elaine could have imagined. 3 warehouses, 200 employees, trucks with our logo rumbling across state lines. Most days were predictable. Numbers balanced. Systems worked. The ghosts were quiet. Then one afternoon, a courier dropped an envelope on my desk. No return address, just my name in shaky handwriting. Inside, a legal document. Petition for financial assistance, filed by Scott Miller. I read it twice. Then once more. Slower. The letter wasn't emotional, it was procedural. Like a form someone filled out at a library computer. But the words were clear: he wanted money. As repayment for parental investment. It was absurd. A man who gave me away before my 10th birthday now wanted compensation for it. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, he showed up again. Not in the lobby this time, but inside the loading bay, standing between pallets of boxed inventory like a man who'd wandered into someone else's life. He must have slipped in during the shift change, when the dock doors were still open and the guards were swapping posts. When I spotted him, the air around me froze. He looked worse than before. His jacket hung limp, and his eyes were red. Not from crying, but from the kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones. Aiden, he said, raising his hands as if surrendering. You got my letter. I nodded. You shouldn't be here. Scott, this is private property. I didn't mean any harm. He said quickly. I just thought maybe face to face would be better. Better for what I asked. For guilt or for leverage. He took a breath. For closure. For family. That word again. Family. It always sounded like a weapon when he used it. Family, I said quietly. You forfeited that word the day you sent me away. He winced, but didn't leave. I know I made mistakes. Your mother and I, things were hard back then. But we're still blood. Aiden. Blood. I repeated. You think that's what matters? He hesitated. It should. We're connected. No matter what. No, I said. We're not connected. We're coincidental. He flinched again, the word landing like a slap. I'm not asking for much. He tried again. Just enough to breathe. To start over. Maybe a place to stay for a while. You already got your fresh start. I said. It was the day you gave me away. Something in his expression shifted from pleading to anger. You think you're better than me? Don't you, he hissed. Just because those people, your perfect parents, handed you everything. I stepped closer. My voice low and steady. They didn't hand me anything. They showed me how to build it. There's a difference. He shook his head. You think success erases what we had. You can't change blood. I don't want to. I said. I just refuse to let it define me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of forklifts filled the silence between us. He sighed, almost whispering. I'm sorry. Aiden. I really am. And for the first time, I almost believed him. But apologies without change are just more noise. You don't get to show up decades later and rewrite history. I said. He blinked hard. I wasn't ready to be a father. You were 36. I reminded him softly. You weren't supposed to be perfect. Just present. The words seemed to drain the fight out of him. His shoulders sagged. I don't know how to fix this, he said quietly. You don't, I replied. You just stop breaking things. He looked at me one last time. You'll regret this one day, he said, voice trembling with anger that didn't have a place to land. I almost laughed. Regret, I said. The only thing I regret is that I ever believed I was the mistake. He turned, muttering something I couldn't hear, and walked out through the half-open dock door. The rain outside swallowed him whole. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wet footprints he'd left on the concrete. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, the same old table Elaine had bought from a thrift store decades ago, and opened the folder labeled New Roots. Inside were letters, drawings, and report cards from Scott's grandchildren, the same children he wanted me to save. They didn't know the details, only that someone named Uncle Aiden believed in them. And that was enough. I traced my thumb over one of their notes. Thank you for my new backpack. That was the moment I realized something simple, but final. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. 2 weeks later, Megan called. Her voice shook. Uncle Aiden, she said, still using the title, even though I was her brother. Dad's gone. Gone, I asked. What do you mean? He left a note on the kitchen table. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't want to be a burden anymore. We don't know where he went. Silence hung heavy between us. Do you want me to look for him? I asked. No, she whispered. He made his choice. After the call, I drove for hours without a destination, just me, the road, and the sound of rain hitting the windshield. It felt too familiar. I thought of that boy under the kitchen table all those years ago, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder. I whispered. 5 seconds. 1 mile. But this storm wasn't mine anymore. Months passed. The kids, the next generation, kept growing. Liam managed logistics. Nora handled HR. The younger two were finishing college. They didn't carry the same kind of hurt their mothers did. And that alone felt like victory. One evening, Liam stayed late to help me sort reports. He leaned back in his chair. Thoughtful. You know, he said. Grandpa used to tell us you were angry because you were jealous. But I think he was jealous of you. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But I didn't build this to prove him wrong. I built it so you'd never have to wonder if you were wanted. He nodded. I don't. And just like that, the conversation ended. No drama. No closure. Just quiet understanding. Sometimes I still think about Scott's last words. We're still blood. Maybe he meant it as comfort. Maybe as guilt. But I finally understood what Victor once told me when I was 16. After a tough day at the shop, Family isn't the people who make you. It's the people who stay. I never saw Scott again. No letters. No calls. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, silence didn't scare me. It felt earned. It's strange how peace arrives. Not with fireworks. Not with applause, just quietly. Like sunlight slipping through blinds you forgot to close. By the time I turned 40, it had been 5 years since Scott disappeared. He'd left a note on my sister's kitchen table and vanished from the map. No address. No calls. No closure. At first, I checked missing person reports every few weeks. Then every few months. Eventually, I stopped. Because one day, I realized I wasn't looking for him anymore. I was looking for the boy he'd abandoned, hoping he'd finally been seen. But that boy didn't need saving anymore. The company had become a machine that hummed with purpose. 3 warehouses. 150 employees. Steady contracts. Stable growth. The name Hayes Supply Co. had become something solid, part of the town's backbone. Liam, now in his late 20s, ran logistics. His sister Nora managed HR. The younger two, Evan and Grace, were finishing college. Every Friday, they dropped by the office to eat leftover donuts from the break room and tease me about not taking vacations. Uncle Aiden, Nora said once, hands on her hips, "You've got enough vacation days to retire twice." I'm not sure the company would survive that much free time. I joked. They laughed, rolling their eyes. But beneath their teasing was something I never got tired of seeing: trust. The kind that doesn't come from obligation, but from being loved right the first time. One rainy afternoon, I drove out to the old garage, the original shop. It still smelled faintly of oil and metal. The pegboard walls were dotted with old chalk labels, and the light flickered like it always had. I ran my hand along the workbench. There were scratches shaped like memories, places where Victor's hammer had slipped, where I'd once spilled paint and tried to scrub it off before Elaine saw. In the bottom drawer, I found it, the little sewing kit Victor had bought me when I was 8. The thread was brittle now. The needle rusted. But the box still snapped shut with the same sharp click. I slipped it into my pocket, not because I needed it, but because it reminded me that things could be mended, even people. That evening, I drove to the lake north of town, the same one Victor used to fish at, even though he never caught much. Rain drifted across the surface, soft and rhythmic. I sat on the hood of my truck and watched the ripples spread, one after another, until they reached the shore. For a long time, I thought about Scott, not as the man who'd hurt me, but as a person who'd simply never learned how to stay. Maybe he really did feel sorry. Maybe he just ran out of ways to say it. Either way, I didn't need him to anymore. I whispered into the quiet, "I forgive you, but I don't miss you." And for the first time in my life, the words didn't taste bitter. They just existed. When I got back to the office, Liam was waiting. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his laptop open. "You okay?" "Uncle Aiden," he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just needed some air." He hesitated. "We got an offer today. Big one. A company in Chicago wants to buy us out, full acquisition. They say they'll keep the name." I raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think?" He grinned. "I think I don't want to sell. This isn't just a company, it's a story. And I'm not done writing my chapter yet." I smiled, slow and proud. "Good answer." He chuckled. "Guess I learned from the best." That night, when everyone left, I stayed behind. The office was quiet. The kind of quiet that hums instead of echoes. On the wall across from my desk hung 3 framed photos. Victor and Elaine, standing outside the first shop, their smiles wide and proud. The 4 grandkids, my nieces and nephews at their graduation, holding certificates with the kind of grin you only have when you know you're loved. And one photo of me at 21, shaking Victor's hand the day we filed the company's first papers. Below them, a small plaque read, Family isn't who gives you life. It's who helps you live it. I looked at those faces, all frozen mid-laughter, and realized something. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was legacy. A few hours later, as I locked the doors, I noticed movement across the street. A man in a gray coat stood under the flickering streetlight, motionless, for half a second. Then my chest tightened, same posture, same slump of the shoulders. Then a car passed, and he was gone. Maybe it was just a stranger. Maybe it was memory playing tricks. Either way, I didn't chase it. Some ghosts deserved to rest. A month later, we held our 15th anniversary for Hayes Supply Co. The warehouse was decked with string lights and handmade banners. Employees brought their families. Kids ran between aisles of tools like they were playgrounds. When it was time for speeches, they pushed me toward the front. I cleared my throat, the mic squeaking a little. I don't have much to say. I began scanning the crowd, except that this place started because two people believed in a boy no one else wanted. I paused, the lump rising in my throat. They taught me that everything broken can be fixed. Tools, business, people. You just have to want it bad enough. I looked at Liam and Nora in the front row, their faces lit with pride. I used to think revenge was how you made peace with the past. I said, now I know peace comes when you stop waiting for the past to apologize. The room went silent. Then, someone started clapping. Soon, everyone joined in. And for once, I didn't flinch from the noise. Later that night, after the cleanup, I found a small brown package on my desk. No name. No note, just twine around old paper. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before. Me at 8 years old, standing in front of Victor and Elaine's first truck, clutching my teddy bear. On the back, written in shaky penmanship, were 4 words. You kept your promise. I didn't know who left it. Maybe one of the kids found it in storage. Maybe the world has its own way of tying loose ends. Either way, I smiled, because they were right. I had kept my promise, not just to Victor and Elaine, not just to those kids who needed a chance, but to that terrified little boy hiding under a kitchen table, who once believed he wasn't worth staying for. The lights clicked off one by one. I stepped outside, locked the door, and looked up at the clear night sky. For the first time in decades, there was no thunder waiting behind the clouds. Just quiet. Just peace. Just home. Story 2. I wish you'd never been born. Even your birth ruined my life. That's what my mom said right in front of the guests. Right under the string lights and flowered arch, where my sister had just said I do. And my brother. He laughed loud enough for the entire table to turn. My name is Rachel. And from wherever you're watching this, remain with me. Have you ever realized in a single moment that your family never saw you as human? I refrained from crying. I didn't scream. I just set my champagne down, pushed back my chair, and walked out of the wedding like I was walking out of a fire. Computer controlled, but burning inside. They didn't call after me. Not my mom. Not my sister in her designer gown. Not even my dad who used to tuck me in after nightmares. No one cared. I walked straight down the gravel driveway in heels, my satin dress catching on thorns, my breath shaking. And when I reached the gate, I turned around just once, and I promised myself they will never see me crawl again. That night, while they danced and toasted to the perfect daughter, I packed up my life. I erased myself from family group chats, deleted photos, blocked numbers. The silence felt better than the noise ever did. And then at 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said, pick up. A trembling voice whispered, Rachel, please tell me this isn't true. Did you really? I didn't let her finish. I said 4 words. Look at the homepage. I hung up after that. And in that instant, halfway between anger and heartache, I grinned, since nothing could stop what I had started now that it was in motion. The world would find out who the true failure was tomorrow, as well as my mom. Never again would she smirk. I was merely a mistake to her. However, I was going to make headlines for the rest of the world. You don't learn to plot retaliation. Growing up, you pray that your mother will love you as much as she loves your siblings. I hope you stay quiet and clean the house if you receive straight A's. She will no longer regard you as a discoloration. She is unable to wash out. Denise. My mother loved looks. Her entire world was carefully planned, like her picture-perfect living room on Pinterest, where nobody could sit, or the breathless, fake laugh she made at church. In private, however, I was the family's letdown. She never forgives herself for the accident. At 19, I became pregnant. By themselves. Horrified. She was being wild while working double shifts at a diner and telling everyone who would listen that I was off somewhere. She threw my brother Chris a welcome home barbecue after he was released from probation after he was found guilty of DUI at the age of 22. I didn't break. Though, I created my own life. I gave my daughter Lily a loving upbringing. I earned a degree in data analytics, took night classes, and got a job at a Fortune 500 company. However, I remained the girl who destroyed her life in their eyes. The wedding wasn't the last straw. It happened a week prior to the ceremony. My business was being bought out. I had been working on a project in secret for 3 years. So I was the only one, not in a panic. An AI-powered tool for real-time financial fraud detection. The board offered me $2.4 million to stay on and develop it solely under their brand after my manager presented it to them. I had kept it a secret. Not even Lily. Until the ink dried. I wanted to keep it to myself. However, I then made a mistake. I told the bride, the golden girl, my sister Jenna. I reasoned that she might notice me if I shared something genuine. She vowed not to speak a word. She expressed her pride in me. I gave me the same hug she gave me as a child. I heard my mother laughing on the phone 2 days later. Rachel is absurd. She believes she created a $1 million invention. Even balancing a checkbook is beyond her capabilities. I realized then that the wedding had never been about love. I was the target of a joke on a stage. They were unaware, however, that I had already prepared my departure. And he set it all off when my mother made fun of me in front of those string lights. They believe I left in silence. They don't know. I carried the detonator as I left. When I got home that evening, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, poured a glass of wine, and removed my heels, which were still resonating with laughter. I wasn't broken. Despite their belief that I was honing my skills. 2 years ago, I started a digital trail. Every petty slight, every whisper about me in emails I wasn't meant to see. Every time my mother rerouted money from Grandma's trust into Chris's failed businesses, I backed it all up. From Jenna's backdoor job placements to Chris's shady crypto scam that had quietly defrauded 3 families at our church. I wasn't just building tech. I was building leverage. And the real kicker, I never left the family group chat. I just needed it. So I saw it. The photogenic posted hours after the wedding. Me cut mid-walk back. Turned captioned, when the family screw up. Makes a dramatic exit face with tears of joy. Chris commented, probably going to cry into her broke girl wine. My mother responded with 3 crying laugh emojis. I didn't answer. Instead, I started forwarding files. The first went to a private investigator. I'd already vetted someone skilled in financial forensics. The next batch to a journalist friend I'd met through work. One who was itching to do a piece on corruption, hiding in perfect suburban families. Then came the anonymous tip to the IRS and the final move. I changed the password on the shared Dropbox folder Jenna and I had used to collaborate on her wedding slideshow. Why? Because the final file, the one labeled vows and a final data movie, wasn't what she thought. She'd uploaded the wrong video weeks ago. A screen recording a call between her and Chris where they joked about screwing me over. Where Jenna said, let her drown in her spreadsheets. She'll always be trash, with a pretty resume, where Chris called Lily, my daughter, the oops baby with bad hair. I kept that file quietly until the moment was right. And oh, that moment was coming because, 2 days later, Jenna sent us text. Hey fam, wedding rewatch party at our place this Saturday. 2 hearts. My fingers shook with something dangerous. Not fear. Purpose. IRSVP yes. Then, I sent the file to the AV guy she'd hired. The one whose sister I'd mentored last year. And I told him, play this first. Let them gather. Let them sip champagne. Let them lean in close. Because the truth was about to hit like a wrecking ball through their glass house. Saturday came cloaked in sunshine and smugness. Jenny's condo was packed. Lace garlands still dangled from door frames. The words "Forever Starts Now" shimmered in gold above a rented projector screen. Everyone had their phones out. Drinks in hand. Faces full of post-wedding glow. They hadn't seen me yet. I stood in the back by the patio doors. Wearing black. Jenna squealed. Arms wrapped around Mom, who wore the same pearls that she used to say was for her real daughter's big day. Chris was pouring mimosas, laughing loud like someone who'd never been afraid of karma. I tapped the heavy guy on the shoulder and handed him the flash drive. He blinked once, then nodded. He didn't need reminding. He remembered how I helped his sister get her first coding internship when no one else believed in her. He remembered the long nights I stayed on Zoom, teaching her Java. Now it was showtime. The lights dimmed. People clapped. Jenna clinked a glass and giggled. Okay. Y'all get ready to cry again. Best day of my life. Incoming. They expected slower mo walks and teary vows. Instead, the audio hit like a gunshot. Yena's voice crystal clear. Let her drown in her spreadsheets. She'll always be trash with a pretty resume. Gasps real sharp ones. Chris's laugh followed oily and cruel and her kid that oops baby with the messed up curls. Poor thing's going to look like her loser mom. Dead silence. Someone dropped their drink. He didn't blink. The video kept rolling. The two of them sitting side by side. Mockingly mocking Lily. Chris calling Mom a pro at playing victim. And Jenna giggling. She'll guilt trip me into giving up that trust money. Eventually. Just wait. I watched my mother's face crumble. Her glass slipped from her hand. Shattered. Jenna shrieked. Lunged for the projector. Too late. The damage was done. Like poison sprayed on roses. No. Taking it back. The room turned. Uncles. Aunts. Family. Friends. The same ones who'd clapped when Mom made her speech at the wedding, now stared in horror. Me. I stepped into the light. It was only then that they saw me standing tall, with a steely spine and a betrayed heart. When I said that, my voice remained steady. I learned how to keep quiet from you. However, I unlearned it. Jenna's face turned completely white. Chris stumbled over the word context. Just as her phone rang, Mom opened her mouth and shut it. The whole room leaned in as she looked down, froze, and then whispered the words. This isn't possible. However, it was. And that was just the beginning. She let the phone drop. Like a warning bell. It clattered against the marble floor. I remained motionless. I didn't have to. The damage was doing the talking. As the video came to an end, the voice on the other end continued to reverberate from the screen before fading into silence. It was so quiet that you could hear footsteps 2 rooms away clicking on the kitchen tiles. Once more. Mom's shaking fingers grasped for the phone. Her voice, which I hardly recognized, answered, thin and weak, horrified. Hi there. She fixed her gaze on mine. Has the individual spoken? Then, like a slow bleed, the color left her face. No, she muttered. No, she refused. I took a small step forward to ensure that everyone could see me. Jenna was the first to stagger over to me. How on earth did you do that, Mimi? As calm as ever. I cocked my head. I simply hit the play button. Chris made an effort to enlarge his chest. We were hacked. Chris, you're careful, I said. Perhaps you should take a seat before your knees buckle. I am fully aware of the number of texts you sent Jenna while having an affair with your boss's wife. Chris's boss and his wife were present. So there was a gasp from a significant other. Mom had invited everyone. It turned out. Slowly. I turned to face her. That call. Didn't it come from Harold Gaines? She moved her lips but did not make a sound. I grinned. I suppose that what you said about his wife and your intention to deprive me of the trust my father left me did not sit well with Harold. Jenna spoke in a wild, high voice. What's the point of involving him at all since you involved my daughter in this? Sharp as glass. I said. To make yourself feel taller. You made fun of a young girl. I surveyed the space. You all chuckled. I cleaned up the family messes while you were all watching. Make the cakes. Pay for Mom's medications and drive her to her appointments. I became disposable the instant Jenna had her moment. There was a murmur from the rear. Hold on. What have faith? At that point, Mom lost it, as if her bones were giving out. She collapsed into a chair. Because the questions were starting to come now. Not for me. For her. How come you didn't tell us Amy's father abandoned her? Jenna was attempting to access it. But why? And more. I spoke softly as I leaned in. Mom. Don't worry. I retained the original. The one you didn't want anyone to see. That is. The waiter who had previously brought me the note returned to the room with an envelope in his hand as her mouth opened in horror. Mom whimpered. Jenna lunged once more. It's too late. Our father's sister, Aunt Carla, received the envelope from the waiter. Carla pulled it open. She looked over the paper. Then she said, Oh my God. Looking up, Aunt Carla's voice cracked as she read the will aloud to my daughter Emily and Grace. I leave the full ownership of the lakeside house and the adjoining lands. On her 30th birthday, she will receive all of the money in the private family account. Everyone turned to Mom after she stopped. Have you created a new? Well, Carla's voice trembled as she asked. Did you mention that there wasn't one of the others? Mom said nothing. He didn't have to, because her silence was louder than any scream. The room erupted. You lied to us. Uncle Gary shouted. You let Jenna plan to sell the house. That land was always meant to stay in the family. Jenna's lips curled. Oh. Please. Nobody cared about that dump until now. And Emmy was never supposed to get anything. My hands clenched. I took a step forward. I was never supposed to get anything. Or you wanted me to believe that. Jenna scoffed. But her eyes started around like a cornered fox. You're such a victim. Emmy. You always were funny. I said. That's what you said in the video right before you called Mom a useful tool for manipulating me. Gasps again. Mom shot to her feet. You recorded that I didn't have to. I said. Your own security camera did. The one by the guest house. Jenna spun to her fiancé. You're not really believing any of this. Are you? He didn't answer. He was staring at the screen. Jaw tight. Eyes glazed, because the next clip had just started playing. Jenna standing in Mom's kitchen saying the words, Don't worry. She dumb. We'll guilt her into signing it all over. Like always. She just wants to feel loved. That's her weakness. And in the background, Mom's voice crystal clear. You're right. She always folds when she thinks I care. Quiet. Thick cutting. Absolutely. I looked out into the throng. You have spent your entire life protecting these individuals. Those who made you smile during dinner. When Dad passed away, who shed fake tears. Carla then turned away. She appeared queasy. Is there another person present? Perhaps a cousin whispered. It was she who supported him while he was in the hospital. Not Jenna. Not Chris. Mom sprang at the screen, attempting to turn it off. It's too late. Everyone had had enough. Her image was ghoulish, distorted in the middle, and froze. I gazed at the space. Now everyone is watching me. You buried me under your cruelty for years. I said. Break down. Peace is what I came for. My voice cracked a little. However, poison does not breed peace. After that, I ignored them all. I didn't leave all at once. I walked steadily. A young woman who has nothing more to prove. The room buzzed like an open wound behind me. Some are crying. Others are whispering. A little yelling. The anger and disbelief in my mother's voice caused it to rise and crack. But I could no longer bear it. My face was baptized by the air outside. The pure were pulled. I was able to breathe once more. Before I could even reach my car, I was being chased. Hold on. Emmy. Who is it, Carla? The sound of her heels hitting the driveway was loud. She was already extending her arms when I turned. I had no idea. I promise you. I think you're real, I said quietly. She let out a breath as if she had been submerged. You did more than simply reveal their identities. I was reminded of your identity by you. She then gave me a tiny black folder containing an original copy of The Well, which it seemed Mom had lost. After your father passed away, I discovered this. It was out of date. She said. I apologize. I took her word for it. I tightened my throat and blinked hard. Why now, I inquired. Since you become complicit when you remain silent, I will no longer be complicit. That's how we stood for a while. After being played by the same queen on the same board, two women ultimately made the decision to switch roles. I gave her a hug because she needed consolation, not because I did. Then, though I didn't go home, I got into my car and drove. Only one stop remained. When I pulled up, I saw the old hospital where Dad had spent his last days. I was remembered by the front desk nurse. She gave him a little envelope. She said, I was instructed to give you this. The day before he died. Your dad gave it to us. I opened it, my hands trembling. It contained a brief note written in Dad's distinctive handwriting. I've always thought of you as my favorite symphony. Beautiful, loud, and hard to ignore. The signed deed to the house was folded underneath it. Observed. Notarized. He had never wished for me to struggle for it. I had already received it from him. He simply knew that without a war, they would never give it to me. I smiled for the first time in a very long time as I pressed the paper to my chest. My retaliation wasn't finished yet. Though, the morning would bring that. I arrived at the county records office by sunrise. 10 minutes following the opening, the reception desk woman, bless her heart, Janine, slid the ownership documents across the counter and stamped the last page. She said, Congratulations, Miss Emerson. Officially, the property belongs to you. Not to us or the families. My own. I had parked directly in front of the house by 11 a.m. At one point, I was told that I was not welcome in the same home. According to my mother, I was not authorized to enter the house where my name was. Whispered like a curse in the corridors that I assisted in repainting. I didn't use a key this time. Weeks ago, I changed the locks. Rather, I waited while ringing the doorbell. Mom still held the phone as she answered. Mascara emerged from the public unraveling last night. Behind her eyes, bloodshot and hungover. My brother smelled of stale shame and stale whiskey. Lifting her chin like a queen who feared the peasants would bow, she said, I assume you're here to apologize. I gave her an envelope. What is this? A notice of eviction, with a steady voice. I answered, 60 days. I'm being giving. Her face broke. I own this house. No, I interrupted. Dad owned it. It's mine now. I demonstrated the act to her. Signed. Stamped. Legal. And I'm not interested in cohabiting with people who'd sell my soul just to hear applause. She stumbled backward like I'd struck her. You're doing this to punish us. No, I said, stepping into the doorway. Light behind me like the scene from every redemption movie you've ever watched. I'm doing it so I can finally live in peace. And so you can finally sit with everything you tried to bury. My brother tried to speak, but I silenced him with a look. I don't need revenge. I whispered. I became everything you said I'd never be. That's justice enough. Then I walked away. I refrained from crying. I didn't turn around. Some people wait a lifetime for someone to come save them. But I learned something they never did. Sometimes you don't need saving. Sometimes you are the storm.